My sister couldn't stand to see me happy, and my parents supported her. I turned my pain into revenge at the altar. I've been called a lot of things within my own family: jealous, cold, selfish. They even said I had some kind of problem just because I didn't make a fuss over everything, like my sister Nicole. I grew up hearing that I needed to understand her side, that I was the older one, that I had to give in. And for many years I did. I gave in at parties, at Christmas, on trips, on clothes. I gave in on everything. But there comes a time when we get tired. I was tired. I was tired of being the good daughter who swallows everything in silence, who can't shine because the other one cries. I was tired of hiding my achievements so as not to destabilize my sister. And what made me explode? My own marriage. When Igor proposed, I thought maybe this time it would be different, that my parents would look at me with pride, that Nicole, I don't know, would at least pretend to be happy for me. But no. The first thing my mom said was, "You're going to tell your sister really nicely, okay? She's going through a rough patch." And then the restrictions began. No big party, no Instagram announcement, no ceremony with guests. Everything was kept secret. Because according to them, Nicole couldn't handle seeing her sister get married first. And you know what's crazy? They said it so matter-of-factly, as if it were obvious that I should accept. I spent weeks in shock. Igor was outraged, but I still tried to defend my parents. I said it was their way, that maybe it was better to avoid any trouble. But deep down, I was devastated. It was my wedding. Mine. The only thing I'd ever dreamed of doing my way. I'd never demanded anything, never asked for help with anything. And when I finally wanted to celebrate something of my own, they acted as if I were being cruel. What hurt me most wasn't even the request for secrecy. It was the naturalness with which everyone expected me to swallow it without question. The real trigger came when I heard my mother telling my aunt that I should be more understanding, because it wasn't like she was that special a bride. It hurt in a way I can't explain. I was in the hallway, heading to the kitchen, and stopped dead in my tracks. It hit me like a tripwire. I, who had always been the one who managed, the one who never gave any trouble, the one who took care of Nicole when she freaked out. Now I was seen as selfish for wanting to live my own marriage. That broke me. That day I cried in the bathroom like a child, alone, curled up on the cold floor, not knowing what to do. Igor found me later and said we could run away, get married somewhere else, forget everything. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted for the first time to be seen as someone who also feels, who also has the right to be happy without having to apologize for it. And that's when I made the decision that changed everything. The ceremony was already scheduled for the civil ceremony. Everything was perfect, just the way my parents wanted. Simple, discreet, just us, 2 witnesses, and that was it. But deep down, I was already making a plan. I called my childhood friend, the only one who had always supported me without judging me. She agreed to help me right away. I found a small but cozy venue. I invited a few friends, co-workers, people who truly valued me. I bought a new dress, had flowers made, and organized everything in silence. Only Igor, and she knew. On the appointed day, we went to the civil ceremony in the morning as planned. My parents were there, serious and cold. Nicole didn't show up. They say she had a fit because she saw a photo of me with my wedding ring. We did everything quickly. I signed the papers, and we got back in the car. Regina hugged me as if she'd done me a huge favor. Sergio patted my back like someone patting an employee. That was our farewell. Because that afternoon, I went to experience my real wedding. I arrived at the ballroom with my heart racing. Not from nerves, but from relief. It was as if a weight had finally been lifted from my body. The party was small, but full of affection. There was music, laughter, and sincere hugs. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't fading. I was the bride, the happy woman, surrounded by people who saw me, respected me, celebrated me. That was the beginning of, my transformation. Because that was when I understood that I no longer needed to mold myself for the love of others. That being invisible wasn't a destiny. It was a prison. And I had just escaped. In the middle of the party, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages from my mom, my dad, even a cousin who didn't even speak to me properly. Everyone was outraged. One of the guests posted a photo of the ceremony on Instagram with the caption, "She deserved this day." It was enough. My parents felt betrayed, as if I'd done something horrible. Regina wrote, "You set this all up behind your family's back. That's a lack of character." I read it with my hand shaking, but for the first time, I didn't cry. I just looked at Igor, took a deep breath, and said, "They were never my real family." Nicole freaked out. She sent me massive audio messages saying I was a viper, that I'd destroyed our family's trust, that I should be hospitalized for throwing a party just to show off and humiliate her. She hadn't even gone to the registry office, never asked if I needed help, and stayed home crying because it was unfair that I was getting married. At that point, any remaining bond between us was completely rotten. And you know what's worse? My parents sided with her again, as always, as if my mistake was simply not having annulled myself once again. In the days that followed, I remained silent. I didn't answer anyone. I didn't apologize. I didn't go to their house to apologize. For the first time, I let the scandal be their problem. And honestly, it was liberating. I no longer wanted to belong to a group that only accepted me when I was out of touch. I began to allow myself to feel proud of myself. It seems small, but for someone who's spent their entire life being belittled, it's immense. I looked in the mirror and thought, you did what no one else dared. You chose you. It wasn't easy. I spent days screaming, what if I'm wrong? What if it's selfish? But then I remembered all the birthdays I'd canceled because Nicole was sad. The graduations my mom asked me not to post because Nicole couldn't finish college. The times I got promotions at work and was asked to keep it a secret because your sister will feel bad. It all came flooding back. And I understood that this wasn't family. It was a system of emotional abuse disguised as care. Igor gave me incredible strength. He saw me crumble and helped me get back up. He didn't try to convince me to forgive or follow any standards. He just said, I see you, and you're not wrong for wanting to be happy. That made an impression on me, because I realized that everything I wanted from my family, I had already built with him, with my friends, with the people who were truly happy for me, and not out of obligation. Those messages made me realize I wasn't alone, that my story wasn't crazy, that there were people who could relate, who felt the same pain. I decided to start therapy, and it was there that I said the most difficult thing of my life. I'm not a bad daughter just because I don't sacrifice myself for them. The psychologist looked at me calmly and said, you just freed yourself. That broke me again, but in a different way. For the first time, I cried with relief. For the first time, someone looked at me without judging me, without trying to belittle me, without accusing me of being insensitive just because I said enough. And that day, I promised myself, I will never again bow my head to fit into a space that doesn't want me whole. I distanced myself from my family for good. Not everyone, but my parents and Nicole, yes. I blocked them when necessary. I learned to deal with the guilt, which always appears. But I also learned to look ahead. I don't need a crowd applauding me. I just want people who respect me, who understand that I'm not an emotional support for my sister's outbursts, that I also have limits, fatigue, willpower, self-love, and that being strong doesn't mean accepting everything in silence. Being strong is knowing when it's time to say, it's over. That small party, in that hall rented with the money I'd saved myself, was my rebirth. I entered there as a silenced bride and left as a free woman. A woman who had finally decided to write her own story, and who doesn't owe anyone explanations for how she chooses to be happy. Today, I still hear harsh comments from some relatives. They say that Livia has changed, that marriage messed with her head. But the truth is, I haven't changed. I've just stopped accepting half-hearted living. People get used to us being quiet, nice, and available. When we impose limits, they call it rebellion, coldness. But no one ever wondered how many times I've held back tears to avoid ruining the mood, how many times I've accepted being erased in the name of harmony, but now I'm never going back to that place. I received a few messages from people telling me I was brave, that they wished I had done the same. And it's strange, because I didn't feel brave that day. I was scared, my heart in my mouth, but I was tired. And I think sometimes courage is born from exhaustion, when you simply can't stand being invisible anymore. When you stop begging for crumbs of recognition and decide to build your own space. That's what I did. And even with the consequences, I would do it all again. Nicole continues to be treated like a crystal by my mother. The last I heard was that she's very sensitive because her boyfriend broke up with her. My parents are caring for her as if she were a sick child. And me? I'm at peace no longer being part of that drama. Because there, in that dynamic, I only existed if I was erased. And today, after everything, I see myself much more clearly. I recognize myself. I listen to myself. And I no longer let anyone silence what I feel. Of course it still hurts. There are days when I miss it so much. Not for the company I had, but for the idea of having a family who truly welcomed me. I look at old photos and wonder if that was ever real or just a fantasy of mine. But even with this pain, I feel more whole than at any other point in my life, because now my story is mine. And even if it's not perfect, it's true. And no one can take that away from me. I never wanted revenge in the cruel sense of the word. What I did at that wedding was an act of justice against myself. I deserved to experience that. I deserved that dress, that hug from my friends, that smile of guilt-free happiness. And if to achieve that, I had to disappoint those who always expected me to be submissive, then so be it. Because, in the end, no one ever cared about disappointing me. Today, I work with what I love. I have a healthy relationship, and I no longer depend on family approval to feel valid. Sometimes I think about writing all this in a book, but I always end up coming back to these kinds of forums. Because it was reading stories like this that I realized I wasn't alone. And if what I experienced helped someone else find strength, then it was worth it. There are too many people living in fear of disappointing others, and too few people teaching that disappointing yourself is even worse. Little by little, I learned to celebrate my victories out loud. I allow myself to smile without guilt. I allow myself to say no without explaining myself. I learned to be my own role model. It wasn't overnight, but today I can say with certainty, I'm happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm finally in control of my own life. And that's liberating. If you've made it this far and recognized yourself in any part of this story, I can only say one thing. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to live in peace. Don't settle for anything less. I did for far too long, until the day I put on my white dress, looked ahead and said, now it's my turn.